Welcome to Sex and Breakfast, the sexy way to start your day. Dishing out sexpert advice and spicy insights about sex, love, and everything in between. Hosted by sex coaches and therapists from around the globe. Okay, today we will be talking about a topic dear to my heart, that is sexual trauma. Please note to all listeners, this is a sensitive topic and we will be discussing rape and other violent matters. I will be discussing what sexual trauma is, a little bit about my personal background in the matter, and then we'll dive into some key questions for you or anyone you know who may be dealing with this topic. So, what is sexual trauma? It's kind of this umbrella term that myself and many of my peers use to describe all forms of sexual violence, including but not limited to sexual assault, which is any sexual contact, be it groping, fondling, touching, oral, etc., that is without consent, rape, which is non-consensual intercourse, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and I will also like to add sexual shaming as well. So within sexual trauma, there are what we call big capital T trauma and little t trauma. So post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is generally associated with big T trauma. This is when the trauma is so intense that there's significant avoidance in the process, in processing the experience. Like a great example would be um, experiencing or witnessing a life-threatening event like sexual violence. And I will continue to say this again and again, PTSD and avoidance and, all of these things that have to do with, the experience have nothing to do with the person being weak or inept. In fact, people that have survived big T trauma are incredibly strong and resilient, and some of my favorite people in this world. Now, little t trauma, for the most part, do not lead to PTSD, but other emotional helplessness and shame, and definitely have a negative impact on our life. For example, a distressing event that isn't life-threatening, but exceeds our ability to cope. And an example might be sexual neglect. So, just to give you a scope of how infectious these issues are in society, RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, it's the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the United States, states that as of today, 1 out of every 6 women have been the victim of an attempt or completed rape. And for men, it's 1 in 33, which both are insanely too high. So we're talking about every 68 seconds. So basically, by the end of this episode, depending on how long we go, about 40 people will have been sexually assaulted in America alone. So I want to give you a little background on why I am so passionate about this topic. It really started from my own experience dealing with sexual trauma at a young age. I was too young to really know how to share my experience. So it just kind of got locked up for years. And it wasn't until I experienced Take Back the Night, which is a nonprofit that does marches and rallies all over the US. And I think they do a little international work, that I actually acknowledged what had happened to me. I remember I was on the college campus and I was shocked to see so many people standing with candles, walking through the campus, showing the world that they were survivors of sexual violence. And I just broke down. See, a part of our brain that deals with sexual violence and trauma can't tell time. It's so what happens is, like, the trauma was triggered, and instead of my brain saying, oh yeah, that's a memory that happened years ago, it was like I was instantly re-experiencing it all over right there for in that moment. And so I realized in that by that experience at Take Back the Night, that I wasn't alone. And that's a huge part of healing in the trauma, but also in the sexual trauma arena, is really being able to understand that you're not in this alone. And it began my long healing process. And then I started my advocacy work and got certified to work on a rape and domestic violence hotline where I supported immediate needs of people in distress. And I also worked as a hospital advocate. That was a lot of big T trauma witnessing. And although that kind of and through that kind of decade of my life supporting and also going through my own healing journey, I realized that there was a need in my healing process that I actually didn't get met and that I could fill for other people dealing with sexual trauma. See, when I went through traditional therapy, specifically, I did EMDR, which is tailored for PTSD, which I highly recommend. Uh, it did a great job healing me from here in my head and in my heart, but it really didn't connect to my sexual functioning, specifically being able to tap into pleasure with my partner. But for others, it can surface through vaginismus, erectile dysfunction, having an aversion to sex, and just the list goes on and on. You see, trauma is held in our body. And although my incredible therapist got me through identifying my triggers, finding safety and healing, most therapists aren't educated beyond the bare minimum sexological courses they need for their licensure. And what that means is we didn't talk about sex. And that's when I decided the best way for me to help others like me was to get certified as a sexologist and a sex coach. So today, almost all my clients have little t sexual trauma, and I still work with big T sexual trauma. But it's after people have done the work and are no longer in crisis mode, because I am not a licensed trauma therapist. And as a disclaimer, before I open this conversation up to the other ladies here, we are all coming to this conversation with various degrees of personal and educational experience. And the information that we share is intended as a self help tool, but not to be a substitute for any professional services that you need. So, with that said, I would love to hear if anyone has any personal experience they would like to share.
I want to also say that I'm also a sexual trauma survivor, and I've worked with, actually most of my clients are, I've only had a few clients that have been big T, most of them are small T's, and only two of the clients that I've worked with in the 10 years that I've been doing this have had no trauma. Two. It's hundreds of people. Two. So it's a big deal. And um, I personally have found that the work that I do and teach, the breath work I teach, and the art process I teach has been really helpful because I'm also certified as a tantrika, and I'm also certified as a intentional creativity teacher and coach, and I'm a sexologist. So, and a sex coach. So I find that the clients that I have had, most of them have worked with therapists already, and they're looking for deeper healing for themselves. And I'm able to do that through the breath work that helps them slow down and connect back to their bodies. And also through the art, the creativity piece I do, where it can be as simple as putting a dot on a piece of paper and then just not even having to name their trauma, because as coaches, we don't go backwards. It's all about moving forwards, starting now and then moving forward. So it's just like just recognizing the trauma and recognizing how that's affected them and recognizing others in the world that it's also happened to. That is so powerful, very powerful. And I'm really excited to be able to talk about this today. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Dominique. And I think that for a lot of people that have gone through the trauma and are on the other side, have found there's a lot of creative processes, physical processes that have been very helpful and effective in getting people to move outside of their system, especially because the body can remember things in a different way than our mind can. So accessing creativity and art is so valuable in order to the healing process because you don't
Mhm.
have to put words to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen, I worked with an artist. Well, it's a woman who was teaching the process for many years. And I worked with women that she worked with. And then I would have my own clients and we would do our work on the side. But through them going through the art process, and all it was just something like just literally just like putting a dot on a canvas. And these are women who've never painted before, never done any kind of artwork, and then they have these giant canvases that they're working on, and they were the most incredible paintings that I had ever seen, because it's like they belong to them, and it was their healing piece. And it's amazing how the that doing an art process, whatever it can be, helps people process that trauma. Like things that people worked on for years, they can help heal over painting, right? And it doesn't go away, but it helps heal that part of them that the therapy couldn't fulfill. So it's just like another piece to the puzzle.
I had worked with trauma, sexual assault, and sexual trauma survivor at the various stages in my career. So I started off as an art therapist working in an acute hospital setting. And given the acute hospital setting, as an art therapist there, I had been working at the very first stage of the trauma. So there are three stages of trauma recovery, and this is written by Judith Herman. So she had two books. This is her first seminal book. Suddenly I forgot the title, but we can put it in the notes. So the stage one is really about establish safety and stabilization. So this is to ensure client safety, emotional, physically. We try to stabilize trauma symptoms. So when they come to the hospital, they could be experiencing a lot of acute symptoms like dissociation, or maybe they're not able to sleep, they're easily triggered, and so all this kind of thing, or suicidality. So all these kind of symptoms, we try to stabilize them. And quite often, like what you say, Nicole, the helping of psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, art therapists in the setting to help safety. That's promote safety and stabilization. It's really important, and this work can be ongoing. So yeah, it's just to help that grounding, emotional regulation, and the stage is not linear, so it can be circular as well. And the second stage is about remembrance and mourning. So we reconstruct the trauma and transforming the traumatic memory into something um, that it can be understood. So, like you say, Nicole, I think you've done the EMDR, and trying to reconstruct what happened and make sense and make meaning out of it. And the stage three is about reconnecting and integration. So you create a new sense of self and a new future, like what Dominic did in her work, recreating a new narrative through making art and creating the new you. And I guess a lot of people, when they come to our sex coaching, or even in my role as now as a sex therapist, they come to this this stage 3. And so you are right, Nicole, in the sense that sometimes when they are at the stage 1 and stage 2, we don't touch on the sexual aspect of it. And sometimes and sometimes the thing about trauma is this: you you don't know that you are triggered until you are put in that situation. So it could be that you've done very well and you feel like, oh, things are great, and then your new partner or your partner touches you in the way that reminded you of trauma, and then the trigger happened, right? So this is the thing about trauma, and then you start you push your partner away, and then you start to feel guilty, and you start to froze, whatever it is. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, it's like you say, Nicole, it's not your fault, but that's how trauma works. You don't know. You 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 didn't know until that happens to you. And when that happened to you, first of all, be compassionate to yourself. You've gone through a lot, and seek help, like engage a sex therapist or a sex coach to help you work with this piece, or even go back to your previous therapist, and both are working together to work on this piece on itself. So yeah, it's like a onion layer. So as you work on the first layer, and you go deeper and deeper, and then you continue to unpeel certain things in the onion layer. So yes, I feel like I'm digressing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that one of the important things that you touched on was the aspect of time. Um, we can be really hard on ourselves in society right now about wanting to fix something right away. But a lot of times when it comes to sexual trauma, it it gets worse before it gets better, and the process isn't linear. You can have good days and you can have bad days. You can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in a good place, and then you start a new journey with a new partner, and it triggers you in ways that you haven't experienced before. And so, I have clients that their trauma was 20 years ago, and they're re-experiencing a new aspect of it because they're in a new exploration with a new partner, or they're in a new place in their life where things are coming up that just didn't come up before. So we need to be patient with ourselves and not judge like, oh my gosh, this is, I can't believe I'm still dealing with this. It's been X amount of time, because it doesn't really work that way. And that's when I really don't appreciate the quote, time heals all, because it doesn't matter how much time has gone by. If you haven't put in the work, it's not going to go away, and it's going to continue to show up in ways that are that you're not even aware of. And specifically, a lot of times people will come into therapy for treatment of different completely different things, and what is happening is it's the trauma coming out. So with like anxiety, depression, substance abuse, there might be infidelity, there's all these other things that might be happening, but that underlayer that hasn't been dealt with is the trauma.
Yeah. On a personal story, I when I was doing training to become somatic experiencing practitioner, we did this boundary exercise. And in one of the boundary exercise, I got snapped back into this experience of groping, sexual assault, groping, when I was in junior high school. I was shocked. I was shocked because all along for 20 years, something in my life, I thought, oh, not even 20 years, my math is Sunday morning, not good for my math. Anyway, I I thought all along that, oh, he was just being playful, da 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 da. And then when I did the training, I realized, no, he was violating my boundaries. He was violating my body, and that came out during a trauma training that I attended. And yes, so we did a lot of exercise around healing that aspect, and working on my nose, and connecting to how I was able to subsequently protect myself. So all this kind of work came out as a result of doing a training itself. Like you say, is really stored in the body.
Can it go with the piece? If it's okay to share a story about how because we're talking about this time piece, and I remember I've experienced multiple sexual traumas, but like you said, it's just like stuffed it down, right? And then for me, like Dion, I was in a training, and I had come to terms with like the first set, like that had happened when I was younger, and it's like okay, that had been dealt with, but there was something that like a major sexual trauma that happened where I'd been assaulted, and I hadn't, it's like I just pushed it down. It was something that happened by a friend, and I pushed it down, and then this is months later where I was in a training and they were going over the boundaries that because I all just the transparency as in a dom training. It was my first training as a professional dominatrix, and I was already accepted and hired in the process, and they were going over our boundaries, or what our yeses are and our nos. And for me the question was, how would you feel being held down? Is that something that you would be okay with? And then it like flashed me back to that moment, and I was like, absolutely not. And then it was something I used to many years ago enjoy, and after that experience, it was like a no for me. And then I had to go through that process of healing that. And it was in that moment when I realized, and I accept it. I didn't realize, but I realized that I didn't accept it yet. I had realized what happened, but it took me like a year full total to really just accept and heal and deal with that moment, right? So there's that piece where, and then through that training, I remembered other moments that the person had done, and I was like, oh my gosh, this has been happening for years. Dominique, this has been happening for years. And it was because of what happened when I was younger, where that I had, it took me years to come to terms with that. So like there's this time piece where you don't know till it surfaces, and then you have to deal with it in bits and pieces. And that's why the training for me, the art training for me has been so healing, because I'm able to create these paintings and like take back these pieces of my body. And that's just what I use in my what I've used as the major tool for me in my healing, and the breath work, where I'm reclaiming these pieces of myself again. And it's taken years to be here and to accept. And my husband is so wonderful and fantastic and knows all about these things. And he's so patient, and he's been so patient and kind through all this healing that I've done. So just know, for anyone who's going through it, like Nicole and Dion, just echoing them, just be patient with yourself.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode. Until then, send us some love by sharing, hitting subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us connect to more incredible people like you. If you want to learn more about sex coaching or therapy, you can find us at sexandbreakfastpodcast.com, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at sexandbreakfastpodcast. The people helping us cook this all up are Michael Merle, creating our tasty tunes, dishing out our audio and video is Max Rainier, and our delectable visual designs by Brie Vilaubi.